The United States Civil War saw the occurrence of paranormal phenomena that continue to this day. Here are some of the most intriguing paranormal events connected with that terrible war. General McClellan. The Civil War did not proceed well for the North during the first few years of the conflict. General George B. McClellan, one of the Union's foremost generals, was striving unsuccessfully to mount effective operations against Confederate forces until early 1862, after McClellan had reported an uncanny experience during which he encountered a vision of George Washington. Late one night, McClellan was scrutinizing maps and planning strategies for attacks when he slowly realized that the enemy seemed well acquainted with his positions and could ward off any offensive. As he sank into despondency, he heard a thunderous voice resounding through his cabin. The voice roared at him that only God was helping the Union to fight off Confederate attacks and that the South would have triumphed otherwise. Looking up from the maps, McClellan found himself staring into the ghostly face of George Washington. Washington heartened McClellan's spirits by telling him that the war was not yet lost and that the US would prevail over many centuries. After delivering his speech, Washington raised his hand over McClellan's head as if blessing him, and thunder reverberated throughout the cabin. McClellan later reported that when he awoke, he was lying on the table, and at first thought that the experience had been a dream. But when he again looked at the maps, he was able to discern markings that indicated a strategy in attacking the Confederate positions. Bizarrely, he had no recollection of making those markings himself. Obviously, this account helped to spread the idea that the North received divine guidance during the war, but the story was only made public after the war ended. It is, of course, impossible to verify whether the vision did actually appear to McClellan, but some phenomena seem to have helped him clear his mind and plan an effective strategy. John B. Gordon, Reincarnation. In 1991, Fire Chief Jeffrey Keane was on vacation with his wife and shopping for antiques when they decided to visit Civil War battlefields. When he travelled to the location where the Battle of Antietam had been fought, specifically a field called Sunken Road, Keane found himself overwhelmed with emotions and physically broke down. He consulted a psychic to help him understand his reaction, and during the readings, the psychic repeatedly stated the words, "Not yet." Over a year later, Keane was reading a souvenir magazine that he had purchased on the holiday when again the strong emotions swept over him, especially when that particular phrase jumped out at him. According to the historical magazine, General John B. Gordon had uttered those same words to hold back his troops during the Battle of Antietam. Keane started to extensively research the life of the Civil War general and uncovered eerie resemblances between Gordon and himself. Old photographs revealed that the two men even looked similar in height, eye colour, birthmarks, and facial characteristics. Keane also recalled another strange parallel. On his 30th birthday, he had felt a severe pain in his jaw, which required a trip to the emergency room. Doctors could find no cause of the pain, which slowly declined and went away. 15 years down the track, Keane was astonished to discover that General Gordon had taken a bullet to the jaw during the Sunken Road skirmish on September 17, 1862, during the Battle of Antietam. General Gordon was also 30 years old at the time. Keane was even born with 3 markings on his face that corresponded to where Gordon was wounded. The strangest connection came when a linguist contrasted the two men's writing styles. Keane's firefighting reports were stylistically similar to the literary expression of General Gordon, who had documented his memories of the Civil War in a book. Both reports appeared to come from the same man, despite the time divide. Keane even noticed that the wrong flag had been depicted in a visitor's centre, correctly identifying the flag used in a surrender ceremony. His belief that he is the reincarnation of the former war general is considered one of the strongest evidence-based cases of reincarnation, without any hypnotic regression having been undertaken. White River Monster. The White River was one of the most crucial trade conduits in Arkansas during the Civil War. Being so important, it was the site of constant armed skirmishes. Strangely, combat on the river may have also involved the mysterious cryptid known as the White River Monster. Although not officially cited until the 20th century, accounts of locals and paranormal researchers have dated the monster back to Civil War days. The oral history of local legend describes the White River Monster as a grey-skinned, amphibious reptilian creature which, when it walks on land, leaves distinctive three-toed footprints. Several attempts have been made to capture the monster without success. Reports of ships inexplicably sinking during the Civil War have led some researchers to surmise that the monster was active during the conflict. Sailors in those days reported incidents of boats being smashed from underneath by an aggressive creature. In other accounts, it was stated that soldiers on the river shore sometimes fired at a huge elephant-like animal in the water. However, the beast always managed to evade the bullets, resulting in several boats being destroyed and sunk by the elusive cryptid. The Haunted House. With its fraught history and highly active cast of ghosts, the Beauregard Keys House is one of the best places to visit if you want to witness an authentic Civil War battle. The elegant New Orleans estate was home to General Pierre Gustave Toutant Beauregard, a leading general of the Confederate forces. Beauregard was in command of the shelling at Fort Sumter, which commenced the war, and was a significant player in the early victories of the Confederacy. Following the war, he retired to his New Orleans residence, where he passed away in 1893. A decade later, the house was purchased by the Giaconas, an Italian family with mob connections. Following a somewhat lethal dinner party in 1909, where 3 rival gang members perished in the house, the Giacona family moved out and planned to convert the house into a macaroni factory. Local concerned residents acted to ultimately save the house as a heritage site, which is when the prolific hauntings started. The Beauregard Keys House is now thought to be one of the most haunted locations in New Orleans, and the paranormal activity is frighteningly real. Around World War II, passers-by began reporting strange occurrences in the house, such as nighttime visions of Civil War soldiers wearing their grey or butternut coloured uniforms. When they're sighted, they simply stand there with a vacant look on their faces, as if staring off into the distance. Then within moments, their spirits dematerialise into the darkness. The proliferation of hauntings suggests that General Beauregard and his troops are still fighting the war in the next life. Local legend states that Beauregard can be seen on some nights flanked by an entire contingent of soldiers amid battle sounds. Common supernatural occurrences there are the sound of distinct gunshots, shouting and groaning, and the whiff of musket fire from the yard. In 1993, paranormal investigator Victor Klein observed and wrote about the appalling spectral phenomena. In his words, he described the scene. Men with mangled limbs and blown away faces swirl in a confused dance of death. Horses and mules appear and are slain by grape shot and cannon. The pungent smell of blood and decay permeated the restless atmosphere. Other paranormal researchers have suggested that Beauregard left something in the house which became an attachment object for spirits of the many men who met their end around him during the fighting. Beauregard's spirit has also been witnessed at the House Museum. Writer Francis Keyes, who occupied the house for 25 years until 1970, once wrote that Beauregard's ghost pokes around at night looking for his boots. It seems they buried the poor man in his stocking feet, and, being a meticulous dresser, especially in uniform, he cannot rest until he finds them. Jefferson Davis's ghost. Few figures from the Civil War are as significant as Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederate States of America. Davis passed away in 1889, but his spirit still walks the earthly plane, according to some paranormal investigators. Davis's post-war home, Beauvoir in Mississippi, is where his ghost still supposedly lives, with sightings starting to occur in 1986. During a Civil War reenactment at the historic estate, a photographer snapped a picture. When he developed the image, he noticed something strange. Two figures stood inside at the windows, one wearing a white dress and the other in a dark suit. For the whole day of the event, the organiser had kept the house locked. Also, the woman in the white dress was standing at the balcony level of the house, which meant that her presence could not be dismissed as a reflection of one of the reenactors. As accounts of the house ghost circulated, staff members at the estate finally came forward to confirm that they had sighted Jefferson Davis on several occasions. Unlike most paranormal locations, full body apparitions occur so often at Beauvoir that visitors have photographed images of the president. Other of Davis's family members have also made appearances, as well as Confederate soldiers who patrolled the grounds. Ghost investigators now frequent the site, and Beauvoir has become a popular hotspot for devotees of the supernatural. Joseph Smith. Mormonism founder and religious prophet Joseph Smith is a controversial historical figure. During his life, he devoted a lot of time to writing down his purported revelations from God and prophecies concerning the future. One of the most pivotal was his 1832 revelation and prophecy that there would soon be a war over slavery between the northern and southern states in the US, and that the war would begin in South Carolina. He also predicted that the South would seek help from Great Britain. The prophecy became a canonized part of Mormon scripture as Doctrine and Covenants section 87. While the Civil War did start in South Carolina nearly 30 years later, historians are skeptical about Mormon claims. At the time of Smith's revelation, South Carolina and the US federal government were locked in a dispute, which was peacefully resolved the following March, and any politically aware person living in the mid-19th century US would have foreseen that a conflict would erupt over slavery, as even then abolitionist movements were already becoming active. Detractors also make the point that Great Britain was not involved in the Civil War to any large extent, and also that Smith's prophecy that the Civil War would ultimately involve all other world nations was proven wrong. Still, devout Mormons argue that these objections are invalid. For instance, they point out how specific the prophecy is about South Carolina, where the Civil War did indeed first break out. They also claim that the prophecy was the forward projection, which includes all wars until the second coming of Christ. In 1842, Smith again reiterated the Civil War revelation, and following his passing in 1844, the Church continued to preach and publish this eerily specific prophecy.